What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. Today I've got an exciting one for you. We are building Glarb, but before we get into that, if you guys want to support the channel, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You'll get a free $15 whenever you sign up, and you'll be supporting the channel. Shout out to my high contributing patrons, Newsome and Irrelevant, you guys rock. Now let's get into what Glarb does. Now Glarb can tap and surveil for 2, so that's already really powerful. We're able to really dig through our deck really fast, fill our graveyard really fast, and then we can play cards like Seedborn Muse to make sure we can do that up to 4 times a turn, and that's kind of going to be how we generate the value of the deck. Additionally, he's going to allow us to cast cards from 4 CMC or greater from the top of our library. So again, that is also a form of card advantage. But mostly, this deck has a secret commander, Valley Floodcaller. Yes, this is a birds, frogs, otters, and rats tribal commander. Now what this is going to do is it's going to untap all of our birds, rats, otters, and frogs whenever we cast a non-creature spell. It's also going to give all non-creature spells flash, which is very powerful with our Seedborn effects. Now, notably, what we're going to do is we're going to equip them, or we're going to cast stuff like Cryptolith Rites, we play Inga and Asika, we play Elven Chorus. That way, all of our frogs, birds, otters, and rats, I'm pretty sure, are able to tap for mana. It's really hard to say all 4 of those without forgetting one in a row like that, so pretty proud right now. But now that we have an engine that untaps all of our mana dorks that are our entire board at this point, we're able to kind of storm off and cast all of our non-creature spells. And then again, we have Inga and Asika to tap some of our creature spells. We're already on stuff like Seedborn Muse, and we have lands in the deck that give all of our creatures flash. So we're just trying to accrue as much value as possible, as fast as possible. And then we're playing your bombs like Maronar, we're playing Gitrog, all the bombs you would expect from your frogs, otters, birds, and oh no, Rats, that's the one. Anyway, that's exactly the goal we're going to take here. It's going to be a value engine deck that's focused around all of those creature types. We're going to surveil a lot to the graveyard. We're going to get a ton of value. We're going to get Valley on the battlefield, and then we are just going to make our frogs massive, because again, Valley does kind of give them prowess. So if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's get into it. I want to kick off this deck tech by talking about the unique ways this deck can win, because Glarb's a pretty unique guy. The first thing we need for this first win con is Elven Chorus, Cryptolith Rites, or Leyline Immersion, and just 3 creatures. That way we can generate up to 3 mana. Then we're going to need our Valley Floodcaller, right? Which is going to be perfect. After that, we're going to include Disinformation Campaign. Now what's going to happen here is we will cast Disinformation Campaign, Valley Floodcaller will trigger, untapping all of our birds, frogs, otters, and rats, and then we're going to draw a card because of Disinformation Campaign. Now what we're going to do is tap our commander to surveil. When we do this, Disinformation Campaign is going to go back into our hand, and you guessed it, we are able to cast it again. Now, when we do this, not only are we untapping all of our other frogs, otters, and rats we control along with our birds, we're also untapping our commander, which again allows us to surveil again. So you can kind of see from here where we can cast Disinformation Campaign as many times as we want, drawing our entire deck while forcing our opponents to discard their entire hand, which is kind of messed up. And I will admit, Disinformation Campaign in the deck alone outside of this combo is just kind of messed up, because we can kind of just do that every turn very consistently, and it's going to be a solid value engine in the deck. Eye of Duskmantle is another very unique card to this commander. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards in your graveyard you've surveilled this turn. If you cast a spell this way, you may pay life equal to its mana value instead of paying its mana cost. This is yet another way we can win with Valley Floodcaller on the battlefield, because what's going to happen is we're going to reassemble the Bolas's Citadel combo, but we're going to use our commander, Valley Floodcaller, Sensei's Divining Top, Eye of Duskmantle, and Aetherflux Reservoir instead. If you don't know how this works already, I'll briefly explain it. What you're going to need is Eye of Duskmantle, Sensei's Divining Top on top of your library, and then an Aetherflux Reservoir. So what's going to happen is you tap your commander, you're going to surveil the Sensei's Divining Top, you're going to pay 1 life to cast the top using Eye of Duskmantle, and then Aetherflux will trigger, gaining us life. Now, If you have Valley Floodcaller on the battlefield, our commander is going to untap whenever you cast the Sensei's Divining Top. Then you just put the top back on top of your library, surveil again, repeat this process, draw your entire deck, net infinite life, and kill all your opponents. Kind of unique, takes a lot of cards to assemble, but in a deck where we're digging as deep as we are and the amazing card selection we get from our commander, this is very possible. Moving on, we're going to talk about what you came here for. Yes, the birds, frogs, otters, and rats. So let's get into what made the cut. In the early game, we got some solid ones that make the deck consistent with Birds of Paradise, Poison Dart Frog, and Clifftop Lookout. Just some solid ways to get some ramp on the battlefield while sticking on theme. Rampant Frog is going to be pretty solid here. He gets massive if we kill one of our opponents, and then additionally he's going to be solid mill. He does synergize really good with Valley Floodcaller because remember, Valley Floodcaller does kind of give all of our creatures prowess in a way, so this guy can get bigger. And then he's going to be solid mill. He's going to put lands directly into play. And then remember, this is a Sultai deck, so our graveyard is an extension of our hand. Gralnock's pretty cool here. He's just going to be some added mill and some added card advantage, not to mention he has a broken ability that he gives to all of your frogs. Whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with a croak counter on them. So this is just going to lend itself to the stormy nature of this deck, and we can kind of just cast all of our permanent spells that we're, exiling or milling this way. So that's going to be awesome. Ledger Shredder, also solid here. He allows us to loot a ton. We're going to get rid of all the dead cards in our hand and draw into hopefully live cards. Easier Warding Familiar, again, amazing because we want to protect our commander, and this guy's going to do exactly that while staying on theme. Pollywog Prodigy and Psychic Frog are just ways to get some added card advantage while staying on theme. Notably, Pollywog Prodigy, pretty good once we start getting that evolve off. He's going to provide a ton of card advantage. Mockingbird is literally just a clone, but it's going to be a bird in addition to its other types. So again, we're not only staying on theme, but we're adding flexibility to the deck along with Croaking Counterpart. Clones are pretty good. They're also pretty good when they're automatically going to be frogs and synergize with our deck. Lord Skitters is also going to be perfect in this deck. It's going to be solid graveyard hate and just add to the board, giving us more rats. Vryn the Relentless, again, just another solid way to make even more rats, and it's also graveyard hate. The Gitrog monster does 2 things here. He adds some solid card advantage to the deck, and he puts some lands in our graveyard, and that's going to be very important for some of the strategy that we want to implore late game, like our Life from the Loam 6 effects. The Gitrog Ravenous Ride. Now this guy might be a head scratcher at first, but honestly, some of these rats can get really massive. I mean, Pack Rat, for instance, we can just discard the good portion of our hand, make a massive board of rats, and then sacrifice them to draw more cards and put lands into play. Additionally, we are going to be playing your Maskwood Nexus effects. That way, everything's going to be a rat. So again, these rats get massive, and sacrificing them to something like the Gitrog monster for a ton of value is going to be very solid. Marinar goes absolutely hard in this deck. Remember, we are playing Valley Floodcaller, right? So whenever we cast a non-creature spell, this guy's getting untapped, and that's just going to allow us to tap him again to make even more rats. Floodcaller, Seedborn Muse, these 2 cards with Marinar is going to basically win us the game, and our opponents are going to have to figure out a way to kill us fast. Ashcoat of the Shadow Swarm, not only does this go really hard with our Marinar effects, but additionally, it goes really hard with our Maskwood Nexus effects, because if everything's a rat, everything's just going to be massive. Black Market Connections, we get ramp, we get a changeling that can be a frog, bird, whatever we need it to be, and we're going to get some card advantage. Not to mention, we have that Aetherflux line, so we can actually gain enough life in this deck to full send it every turn, and that means it's going in the deck. Kaista Otterball Elite. This is just in the deck to get a little bit of card advantage. It's got some looting effects on it. So again, it synergizes very well with Valley Floodcaller, and then it can copy a target instant and sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Activate only if Kaista's power is 3 or greater. So Valley Floodcaller gets the power 3 or greater. This thing also has prowess, and then we can copy target instant and sorcery spell. Notably, that's also a tap ability, so it again synergizes even more with Valley Floodcaller. Last but not least, we're running the Demon Bird. I was running out of birds, guys, so Nadu's going to make a perfect inclusion in the deck. Then we just gotta throw our Swiftfoot Boots in the 99, and then we could accidentally win out of nowhere with, again, the Demon Bird. Let's talk about how we're gonna get more value in this deck, because this deck is just a giant value engine. The first thing that's going to make the math easy in this deck is we have Conspiracy and Maskwood Nexus. These two effects are just going to make everything all creature types, so we don't have to worry what's a frog, what's not a frog, what's a bird, what's not a bird. Everything's a bird, everything's a frog. Don't worry about it. Sting the Glinting Dagger is really solid here as well. We can equip this to our commander, and it's going to be like a mini Seedborn Muse, but just for our commander, so we can surveil up to 8 times a rotation. That's going to get us the key pieces we need to win the game. Unctus Grand Metatect. Now, this one says, other blue creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, draw a card and discard a card. Insane with our commander. We can surveil 2, then draw a card and discard a card. And then additionally, he has a Phyrexian blue ability that allows us to turn a creature blue. So now all the frogs that we're tapping and untapping for value, we can make them blue, and then that's just going to allow us to rifle through our deck extremely fast. Jace's Archivist, amazing with our Seedborn Muse effects, fills the graveyard, and if we turn the thing into a frog and or anything else, it's going to very easily untap with Valley Floodcaller, and this can essentially allow us to draw our entire deck. We're kind of getting to the Root Goldberg machine area of the deck, but let's say we have Valley Floodcaller on the battlefield, Maskwood Nexus, Jace's Archivist, Cryptolith Rites, and then a bunch of other creatures. That's just going to allow us to keep refilling our hand, keep casting non-creature spells, untapping all of our creatures, and again, we can pretty much cast our entire library from here. Inga and Asika is solid in here as well. Now, it only works for creatures, and that kind of doesn't synergize with our Valley Floodcaller, but we have a lot of creatures in this deck, so being able to tap creatures to play more creatures and draw more cards, that sounds like a solid include to me. Mudrotha the Gravetide essentially turns our graveyard into our hand, so she's going to be a solid include here. Kaga, Shadow of Archdruid, allows us to surveil more cards to the graveyard and then cast those cards. That way we're just able to rifle through our deck, even if we like what we see on top of our library. The Scarab God is going to be solid here as well. It's just going to be amazing with our Seedborn Muse effects, and again, all of our other creatures that tap for mana. Now we're able to mill our opponents with our Jace's Archivist effects, reanimate their big creatures, or even our creatures. Maybe we've got some frogs we need to reanimate, and then once we do that, we can untap, drain them for a ton. This can be a solid way to not only find our key pieces because of the Scry ability, it can also be a game ender if we get enough zombies on the battlefield with our Maskwood Nexus effects, and it can be an amazing reanimation piece. Not to mention, you pair this with Seedborn Muse, you're reanimating a ton of zombies per rotation. It's just insane in the deck. Kennen Bonder Prodigy, also insane in the deck. We're tapping all these creatures to generate mana. Why don't they generate double mana? Well, now they do. And then additionally, you pair this with, again, Seedborn Muse. We're able to really shoot off that ability and search for our non-human creatures, which are all of them in the deck, and put them onto the battlefield. Titan's Nest is a card that does not get enough love, especially in this deck. It's going to be amazing. We're going to surveil a ton of cards, then we can exile those cards for mana, and it fills our graveyard. It does everything we want to do. 6 and Life from the Loam is some of my new favorite cards to put in a deck. Together, these kind of just give you access to your entire graveyard. It's like a 2-mana Mudrotha, but they work amazingly in the deck alone as well. Avatar of Woe, kind of just threw this in the deck for the Seedborn Muse synergy, and also Maskwood Nexus and Valley Floodcaller. Kind of cool with that as well. I also wanted to put Concordant Crossroads in the deck because it'd kind of be insane to have a crazy storm turn with something like a Marrow-Gnar, or generate a ton of creatures out of nowhere in the deck, make all those frogs massive, but none of them have haste. Also, it just works with the tapping abilities, right? Maybe we cast a lot of frogs or make a lot of rats with Marrow-Gnar, but they don't have haste, so Cryptolith Rites doesn't work. This is just going to solve that problem. Giving all of our creatures haste is going to make this deck a whole turn faster, and it's really going to become a problem for our opponents. Last but not least, I did want to share this land. It's amazing with Seedborn Muse. Pair them together. It's kind of like you can play at flash speed, which half of this deck does anyway, but this allows us to cast our creatures for flash as well, so it's just going to be a welcome include. With that being said, guys, put all this together and you've got an insane value engine with Glarb. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think this is probably hands down my favorite commander from the set. Let me know what you guys think about this deck down in the comments down below. As always, don't forget to like, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. It's free. Additionally, I would like to shout out my patrons, Newsome, Irrelevant, Excessum, Chicken Salad, and Praetor. You guys are amazing. I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you guys in the next one.